Every nanny ran away from the rich man's kids until one said, "I'm your mother." If you love emotional, unforgettable stories that stay with you, don't forget to like and subscribe. We've got so many more coming your way. The crystal vase exploded against the marble wall, sending shards across Adrian Blackwell's pristine office floor like frozen tears. "Sir, that's the fourth nanny this month," his assistant Margaret whispered into the phone, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "She's locked herself in the bathroom. The children, they've barricaded the stairs with furniture." Adrian closed his eyes, his jaw clenching so hard it ached. Outside his office window, Manhattan stretched endlessly below, a kingdom he'd built with his bare hands, deal by ruthless deal. But upstairs in his penthouse, two small tyrants had just claimed another victim. "Get her out," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Pay her double, triple if she signs a confidentiality agreement." The sound of something heavy crashing to the floor echoed through the phone. Then screaming. Then silence. "Sir," Margaret's voice cracked. "The agency says they're blacklisting us." Adrian's eyes snapped open. In 15 years of building his empire, no one had ever dared to blacklist Adrian Blackwell. But his own children? They'd just done the impossible. 3 days later, "Daddy's meeting another nanny today," 10-year-old Ethan announced to his 8-year-old sister Lily, his voice dripping with the kind of satisfaction that made Adrian's blood run cold. The boy was sprawled across the leather sofa in their playroom, already plotting. "How long do you think this one will last?" 20 minutes, Lily declared, not looking up from her elaborate dollhouse. She was arranging tiny furniture with the precision of a military strategist. "The last one cried when she saw my room." Adrian paused in the doorway, invisible to his children, watching them plan his latest humiliation. Ethan had inherited his mother's sharp wit and his own ruthless intelligence, a devastating combination in a 10-year-old body. Lily possessed that same brilliant mind wrapped in deceptive sweetness, like poison in honey. They weren't monsters. They were just abandoned. And abandonment, Adrian knew better than anyone, could turn even angels into demons. "What if she's different?" Lily asked, her voice smaller now, hopeful in the way that made Adrian's chest tighten. "They're never different," Ethan replied, but his certainty wavered. "They all leave. Because I taught them that everyone leaves." The thought hit Adrian like a physical blow. In his obsession with protecting his children from disappointment, he'd created something worse. Two brilliant, broken kids who pushed away anyone who tried to care. Margaret's voice echoed down the hallway. "Mr. Blackwell, the final candidate is here." Anna Carter walked into Adrian's home office like she owned it. That was his first thought. Not that she was beautiful, though she was, in an understated way that suggested she didn't know it. Not that she was confident, though she carried herself with the kind of calm assurance that came from facing real storms, not boardroom tantrums. It was the way she looked at him. Direct, unimpressed, like she could see straight through his carefully constructed armor to the man beneath. "Ms. Carter." He stood, extending his hand. "Thank you for coming." Her handshake was firm, warm. "Anna," she said simply, "and thank you for seeing me. I know this is the final interview." There was something in her voice, a slight tremor that suggested she understood exactly what that meant. Every other candidate had been turned away before reaching this point. She was his last hope. "The agency briefed you about my children's particular challenges?" A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "They told me Ethan and Lily are creative problem solvers who respond poorly to traditional authority structures." Adrian blinked. "That's diplomatic. That's honest." Her green eyes held his steadily. "Mr. Blackwell, I've read their files. 17 nannies in 6 months. Each one left citing impossible working conditions or behavioral concerns. But here's what I see. 2 incredibly intelligent children who've learned that love comes with expiration dates. They're not trying to be difficult. They're trying to survive." The words hit him like a sucker punch. Adrian prided himself on his ability to read people, to see through their facades to their true motivations. But this woman, this stranger, had just dissected his family's deepest wound with surgical precision. "And you think you can handle them?" Anna's smile turned almost fierce. "Mr. Blackwell, I don't want to handle them. I want to love them. There's a difference." Something shifted in Adrian's chest. A crack in the wall he'd built around his heart, so small he almost didn't notice it. Almost. "The position requires living in," he said, his voice rougher than intended. You'd have your own suite, complete privacy, but you'd need to be available whenever they need you. I understand. The hours are unpredictable. I travel frequently for business. Sometimes they'll need you at midnight, or before dawn, or, Mr. Blackwell. Her voice was gentle but firm. I'm not going anywhere. The crack widened. 3 simple words, but they hit deeper than any business proposal he'd ever heard. I'm not going anywhere. When was the last time someone had said that to him? To his children? He should have recognized her then. Should have seen past the subtle changes. The honey brown hair that used to be golden. The glasses that hadn't been there before. The way she held herself with hard-earned confidence instead of the tentative hope he remembered. But it had been 3 years. 3 years since the divorce, since the custody battle that had nearly destroyed them both. 3 years since he'd convinced himself that keeping the children away from their mother was the right choice. 3 years since he'd seen Olivia. There is one condition, he said finally. I work from home most afternoons. You'd need to coordinate with my schedule. Make sure the children don't disturb important calls. Of course. She paused. May I ask why you work from home so much? Most men in your position prefer the office. The question caught him off guard. Most people assumed his work-from-home policy was about control, about micromanaging his empire. But this woman looked at him like she genuinely wanted to understand. Because they need to know I'm here, he admitted before he could stop himself. Even if I can't always be present, they need to know someone stays. Understanding flickered in her eyes. They've lost enough. Too much. But he couldn't say that. Couldn't admit that in his determination to win the custody battle, he'd forgotten that victory and healing weren't the same thing. When can you start? Tomorrow, if you'd like. He studied her face, searching for the catch. There was always a catch. Miss Carter, I have to ask, why do you want this job? The previous candidates were all highly credentialed, experienced with difficult children. But they all left. What makes you think you'll be different? For just a moment, her composure cracked. Pain flashed across her features, raw and deep. Then it was gone, replaced by that same steady determination. Because sometimes the people who love you most are the ones willing to fight the hardest to stay. Anna Carter moved into the Blackwell penthouse on a Tuesday morning while Adrian was locked in back-to-back conference calls. By the time he emerged from his office that afternoon, she'd already survived her first day with Ethan and Lily. More than survived. Conquered. He found them in the kitchen, the 3 of them covered in flour and laughing. Actually laughing. When was the last time he'd heard his children laugh? Daddy. Lily launched herself at him, leaving flowery handprints on his $1,000 suit. He didn't care. Anna's teaching us to make real bread. From scratch. Like they did in the old days. The old days. Adrian looked over Lily's head at Anna, who was trying to tame Ethan's hair back into some semblance of order. Before bread machines. Ethan explained with the serious tone he used for important matters. Anna says bread tastes better when you make it with your hands because you put your feelings into it. Your feelings? Anna's cheeks flushed pink. It's silly, but it's not silly. Ethan interrupted fiercely. Show him, Anna. Show Daddy the angry bread and the happy bread. She led them to the counter, where 2 loaves sat cooling. They looked identical to Adrian, but Anna pointed to subtle differences. The way one was slightly more golden, the way the other had a rougher texture. I made this one when I was frustrated about, well, something that happened earlier, she explained, indicating the rougher loaf. And this one after we finished that puzzle together. She gestured to the golden loaf. Lily's right. You can taste the difference. Adrian wanted to say it was ridiculous. Wanted to dismiss it as the kind of new age nonsense that made him roll his eyes in board meetings. But watching his children's faces, seeing them so animated and engaged. Can we save some for dinner? He asked instead. Of course. Anna's smile was radiant. I thought we could eat together tonight, if you'd like. The children mentioned you usually have dinner alone in your office. Guilt twisted in his stomach. Another failure to add to the list. I have calls with Tokyo. They can wait 1 hour, can't they, Daddy? Lily's eyes were wide with hope. Please. Looking at his daughter, at the flower in her hair and the joy in her face, Adrian felt something shift. Something that had been frozen for 3 years began to thaw. 1 hour, he agreed. But then I need to work. Ethan finished, rolling his eyes. We know. The dismissal in his son's voice stung, but before Adrian could respond, Anna placed a gentle hand on Ethan's shoulder. Your father works hard to take care of you, she said quietly. That's not something to roll your eyes about. That's something to be grateful for. Ethan looked ashamed. Sorry, Dad. Adrian stared at Anna. In one gentle correction, she'd done something 17 previous nannies had failed to do. Defended him to his own children while still validating their feelings. Who was this woman? Dinner that night was a revelation. Ethan, who usually picked at his food while absorbed in a book, actually participated in conversation. Lily, who normally treated meals like negotiations, ate everything on her plate without complaint. And Adrian found himself laughing. Actually laughing. And then, Ethan was saying, his eyes bright with mischief, Mrs. Patterson's wig flew right off. It landed in the fountain. Ethan Blackwell, Anna said, trying to look stern but failing miserably. You did not put bubble soap in the fountain. I might have. You definitely did, Lily giggled. I saw you. Adrian should have been horrified. His son had vandalized public property. But watching Ethan's animated face, seeing him actually engage with the world instead of hiding behind books and sarcasm. What did you do? He asked Anna. Made him clean it up, she said simply. Every bubble. Then we researched the environmental impact of soap and water systems, and Ethan wrote a letter to the city explaining what he'd learned and volunteering to help with fountain maintenance for a month. Punishment and education, Adrian murmured, impressed despite himself. Natural consequences, Anna corrected. He's smart enough to understand cause and effect. He just needed someone to show him how his actions affect others. Ethan beamed under her praise. When was the last time Adrian had seen his son look so proud? Can Anna read us a story tonight? Lily asked suddenly. She does different voices for all the characters. I'm sure Anna has things she needs to. I'd love to. Anna interrupted gently. If that's all right with you, Mr. Blackwell. Adrian, he said automatically. And yes, of course. As they headed upstairs, Adrian caught a glimpse of Anna helping Lily with her pajamas. There was something in the way she moved, the way she automatically reached for things that nagged at him, like muscle memory. But that was impossible. She'd only been there one day. The first week passed in a blur of small miracles. Ethan stopped hiding in his room. Lily stopped throwing tantrums when she didn't get her way. The house filled with sounds Adrian had forgotten were possible. Children laughing, running, playing. And Anna. Anna was everywhere and nowhere. Always available when the children needed her. Invisible when Adrian required quiet for work. She anticipated needs before they arose. Solved problems before they became crises. But she avoided him. Oh, she was polite. Professional. When their paths crossed, she smiled and made appropriate conversation. But there was always a reason she couldn't stay longer than necessary. Homework to supervise. Baths to run. Stories to read. It began to drive him crazy. The new nanny is amazing, his business partner David said during their Friday call. I can actually hear myself think on these calls now. No more screaming in the background. Her name is Anna, Adrian said, surprised by the defensiveness in his own voice. Right, Anna. Well, whatever magic she's working, bottle it. You seem different. More relaxed. Was he? Adrian caught his reflection in his computer screen and was startled by what he saw. The tight lines around his eyes had eased. His shoulders weren't permanently hunched with tension. The children like her, he said carefully. And you? The question hung in the air. What did Adrian think of Anna Carter? She was competent, certainly. Caring. She'd accomplished in a week what no one else had managed in months. But there was something else, something that made his pulse quicken when he heard her laugh from the other room. I trust her with my children, he said finally. That's rare. That night, he found himself walking past the playroom instead of heading straight to his office. Through the open door, he could see Anna and the children working on a jigsaw puzzle. The lamp cast warm light over their bent heads, creating a scene so domestic and peaceful it made his chest tight. This piece has to go somewhere, Lily was saying, holding up a fragment of blue sky. Keep looking, Anna encouraged. Sometimes the piece that seems impossible is just waiting for the right moment. Her eyes met Adrian's across the room. For a heartbeat, something passed between them, a recognition, a familiarity that shouldn't have been there. Then Ethan called for help with a particularly difficult corner, and the moment shattered. But it left Adrian wondering, and wondering felt dangerous. The breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Adrian was in his office when he heard a crash, followed by Lily's wail of pain. He was out of his chair and running before conscious thought kicked in, his heart hammering with parental terror. He found them in the hallway. Lily sat on the floor, tears streaming down her face, her knee scraped and bleeding from where she'd fallen off her scooter. Ethan hovered nearby, his face white with panic. "I'm sorry," he was saying. "I didn't mean to get in her way. I'm sorry. But Anna." Anna was already kneeling beside Lily, her hands gentle but sure as she examined the scrape. "It's okay, sweetheart," she was murmuring. "It's just a little cut. We'll clean it up and put a pretty bandage on it, and it'll be good as new." She pressed a soft kiss to Lily's forehead, and Adrian's breath caught. There was something in the gesture, something familiar. "Mama used to kiss my owies," Lily hiccuped. Anna went very still. "I remember," Lily continued through her tears. "She used to kiss them and sing the healing song." Adrian felt the blood drain from his face. Lily had been only 5 when Olivia left. The court-appointed psychologist had said she was too young to retain clear memories. But here she was, remembering something so specific. What was the healing song?" Anna asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lily sniffled and began to sing in her sweet, trembling voice. "Magic kisses, magic love, sent to you from up above. Healing light and healing grace, make the hurt go away from this place." Anna's composure cracked completely. Her hand flew to her mouth, tears spilling over. But when Lily looked up at her with innocent, trusting eyes, she somehow pulled herself together. That's a beautiful song," she managed. "Would you like me to sing it too?" And she did, in a voice Adrian recognized, a voice that had once sung lullabies in this very hallway. Anna sang Olivia's healing song while she cleaned Lily's scraped knee. Ethan moved closer, drawn by something he couldn't name. "You know the song?" "Ah, yes." Anna's hands were shaking as she applied the bandage. "My mother used to sing it to me." It was a lie. Adrian knew it was a lie because he'd watched Olivia make up that song one night when Ethan was 3 and had scraped his elbow. She'd been pregnant with Lily then, glowing and beautiful, and so full of love it had taken his breath away. But Anna sang it like she'd written it herself. Because she had. The realization hit him like lightning, sudden and blinding and devastating. He stared at the woman kneeling in his hallway, really looked at her for the first time in 3 years. The hair was different, darker, shorter. The glasses were new. She was thinner than before, her face more angular, shaped by whatever hardships she'd endured since the divorce. But the way she moved her hands when she spoke, the tilt of her head when she listened, the melody of her voice. This wasn't Anna Carter. This was Olivia Hart, the woman he'd divorced, the mother of his children, the love of his life, the woman he'd spent 3 years convincing himself his children were better off without. That night, after the children were asleep, Adrian stood outside Anna's, Olivia's, door for 20 minutes before finally knocking. She opened it wearing an oversized sweater and pajama pants, her hair down around her shoulders. Without the careful styling and professional clothes, she looked heartbreakingly like the woman he'd married. "Adrian." She didn't seem surprised to see him. "I wondered when you'd figure it out. How long have you been planning this?" She stepped aside to let him into her sitting room. It was sparsely decorated. She'd brought almost nothing personal, he realized. Nothing that might give her away. 18 months, she said quietly. "Since I heard about the nanny situation from a mutual acquaintance." Margaret. It had to be Margaret. His assistant had always liked Olivia, had thought the custody arrangement was wrong. But Margaret was smart enough not to betray him directly. She'd simply made sure the right candidate knew about the position. "You forged documents. References. A whole identity." "Yes. That's fraud, Olivia. Identity theft. I could have you arrested." She turned to face him fully, and he saw she wasn't afraid. "Tired, yes. Sad, certainly. But not afraid." "You could," she agreed. "But you won't." "What makes you so sure?" "Because they're happy." Her voice broke slightly. "For the first time in 3 years, our children are happy. And you're not cruel enough to destroy that just to punish me." "Our children." The words hit him like a physical blow. Because they were theirs, weren't they? No matter what the custody papers said, no matter what he'd told himself, Ethan and Lily belonged to both of them. "You left," he said, the old anger rising. "You walked away. You made it impossible for me to stay." The words exploded out of her. "Every nanny you hired was a reminder that you thought I was inadequate. Every court hearing was about proving I was unfit. You didn't just divorce me, Adrian. You erased me. I was protecting them." From what? From their mother? Tears streamed down her face. I made one mistake. One horrible, devastating mistake, and you decided I could never be trusted again. The mistake. Adrian closed his eyes, remembering. Coming home early from a business trip to find Olivia passed out on the couch, empty wine bottles on the coffee table, the children upstairs alone and frightened. Lily had been crying for hours with a fever while Ethan, barely 7, tried to take care of her. It had been rock bottom for Olivia, the culmination of months of postpartum depression she'd been too proud to admit. She'd gotten help immediately, therapy, medication, everything she needed to heal. But the image of his children scared and alone had burned itself into Adrian's brain. It was one time, Olivia whispered. One terrible, inexcusable time. But it was the worst day of my life, and you turned it into the only thing that mattered. I couldn't take the risk. So you took my children instead. She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Do you know what the last 3 years have been like for me? Watching from a distance while strangers raised my babies? Seeing Lily's school pictures on your company's social media and noticing she'd lost weight, that her smile didn't reach her eyes anymore? Hearing through friends that Ethan had stopped speaking for months after I left? Adrian's throat constricted. Those had been dark months. Ethan's silence, Lily's night terrors, his own desperate attempts to be both mother and father while building his empire. You could have fought harder in court, he said weakly. With what money? What resources? You had the best lawyers in the city, character witnesses, evidence of my breakdown. I had a public defender and a history of depression. She laughed bitterly. The system isn't designed for people like me to win against people like you. The truth of it settled in his chest like lead. He'd used every advantage, financial, social, legal, to ensure victory. He'd told himself it was about the children's welfare, but looking back now, he could see his own wounded pride in every legal maneuver. I'm not the same person I was then, Olivia continued. I've done the work, Adrian. Therapy, support groups, medication when I need it. I've built a life, a career. I'm healthy now, whole. But none of that mattered to you, did it? In your mind, I'm still the broken woman you found on that couch. Are you? The question came out harsher than he'd intended. Healthy, I mean. Because what you've done, the lying, the deception, what I've done is love my children. Her voice turned fierce. I've given them 2 weeks of happiness, of feeling safe and cared for. I've shown them what it looks like when someone stays, someone fights for them. If you want to call that deception, fine. But don't call it unhealthy. Adrian walked to the window, staring out at the city lights. Somewhere in this conversation, the ground had shifted beneath his feet. He'd come here expecting to confront a con artist, a desperate woman who'd manipulated her way into his home. Instead, he'd found a mother who'd sacrificed everything for a chance to hold her children again. They don't know, he said finally. No, I couldn't. I didn't want to confuse them. But Lily remembered the song. Children remember more than we think, especially the important things. Olivia's voice was soft now, wistful. Love leaves marks, Adrian, even when we try to erase it. He turned back to her. What did you think would happen? That you could play nanny forever? I thought. She took a shaky breath. I thought maybe I could have a few months. Watch them grow, make sure they were okay, then disappear again before anyone got hurt. But something changed. Everything changed. Tears began falling again. They're so smart, so funny, so full of life. Ethan has your mind, but my heart. He feels everything so deeply. And Lily, God, Lily is fearless in all the ways I never was. Watching them, being with them, I remembered who I used to be, who I could be again. Their mother. Yes. The word was barely a whisper. Adrian studied her face, the face he'd once known better than his own. The woman who'd been his partner, his best friend, his heart. The woman he'd systematically destroyed because he'd been too afraid, too proud, too broken to forgive. I should fire you, he said. I know. I should call the police. I know. I should protect my children from someone who would lie to them so completely. I know. She met his eyes steadily. But Adrian, you can fire me from being their nanny. You can have me arrested, prosecuted, whatever you think is right. But you can't fire me from being their mother. That job? It's mine forever, whether you like it or not. The words hung between them, a gauntlet thrown down, a line drawn in the sand. And Adrian realized, looking at the woman who'd once been his whole world, that he didn't want to cross it. Not anymore. He didn't fire her. The next morning, Adrian simply told Margaret to update Anna's employment file and left it at that. If his assistant suspected anything, she was too professional to ask questions. But living with the knowledge changed everything. Suddenly, Adrian found himself hyper-aware of Olivia's every move. The way she unconsciously hummed while cooking, songs he remembered from their marriage. The way she organized the children's art supplies in the same precise rows she'd once used for her own painting materials. The way she instinctively knew exactly how Ethan liked his sandwiches cut and which stuffed animal Lily couldn't sleep without. These weren't learned behaviors. They were memories embedded in her bones, muscle memory that 3 years of separation couldn't erase. Anna's the best nanny ever, Lily announced at dinner one night. She knows everything about us. Everything, Adrian asked carefully. Like how I hate crusts, but I'll eat them if you cut the sandwich in triangles. And how Ethan needs exactly 7 minutes to wake up in the morning, or he's grumpy all day. And how I can't sleep if Mr. Bear isn't touching my left hand. Each revelation was a small dagger to Adrian's chest. These were things he'd never noticed, details that had been important enough for Olivia to remember 3 years later. She must be very observant, he managed. She is, Ethan chimed in. And she remembers stuff from when we tell her stories about before. Like yesterday, I was telling her about that time we went to the zoo and saw the baby elephant. And she said she wished she could have been there to see my face when it sprayed water. Adrian's fork clattered against his plate. The zoo trip had been right after the divorce. Ethan had been so excited about the baby elephant that he'd talked about it for weeks. But Olivia hadn't been there to hear those stories. Hadn't been allowed to be there. But somehow, Anna had known exactly what to say. That night, Adrian found himself standing outside the children's rooms, listening to Olivia read bedtime stories. Her voice carried through the walls, animated and warm as she brought characters to life. Do the dragon voice again. Lily giggled. Olivia obliged, dropping her voice to a comical growl that sent both children into fits of laughter. The sound hit Adrian like a physical force, pushing him back against the wall. When was the last time he'd made his children laugh like that? When was the last time he'd read them a story, or tucked them in, or done any of the 1,000 small things that made up the texture of parenthood? He'd been so focused on providing, on protecting, on being the perfect single father that he'd forgotten how to simply be present. The shift in Adrian's behavior didn't go unnoticed. You seem different lately, Ethan observed one morning over breakfast. His son had always been preternaturally observant, a trait that had served him well in avoiding authority figures but made him dangerous to adults with secrets. Different how? Adrian asked, genuinely curious. Less angry. You smile more. You actually listen when we talk instead of just waiting for us to stop. The assessment was brutally accurate. Adrian had spent 3 years going through the motions of fatherhood, while his heart remained carefully locked away. But watching Olivia with the children, seeing how they bloomed under genuine attention and care, had awakened something in him. Anna's been helping all of us adjust, he said carefully. She's magic, Lily declared, climbing onto his lap with the casual affection that still took his breath away. She makes everything better. She always did, Adrian thought. Even in the worst moments of their marriage, when her depression was at its darkest and his fear was consuming them both, Olivia had possessed an almost mystical ability to create joy from nothing. A picnic on the living room floor during a thunderstorm. Shadow puppets on the bedroom wall when the children couldn't sleep. Elaborate treasure hunts that turned mundane Saturdays into adventures. She'd been magic then, too. He'd just forgotten. Can Anna stay forever? Lily asked, her small face serious. Like, even when we're grown up and have our own kids? The question lodged in Adrian's throat like a stone. Because the answer, the real, honest answer, was that he wanted Olivia to stay too. Not just as the children's nanny, but as something more. Something they'd both lost and were slowly, carefully rebuilding. Would you like that? He asked instead. Yes. Both children chorused without hesitation. Then we'll see what we can do. It started with small gestures. Adrian began working shorter days, emerging from his office in time for dinner more often than not. He started asking about school projects and playground dramas, actually listening to the answers. He joined the bedtime story rotation, his rusty storytelling skills gradually improving under the children's patient tutelage. And through it all, Olivia watched him with growing warmth in her eyes. They began talking again, carefully at first, then with increasing ease. Late-night conversations in the kitchen after the children were asleep, ostensibly about schedules and household matters, but gradually ranging into deeper territory. "You're good with them," Olivia said one evening, watching Adrian help Ethan with a particularly challenging math problem. "Better than you used to be." Adrian looked up from the homework spread across the kitchen table. "Practice, I guess. You learn things when you have to do it alone." "You were never bad at it," she said quietly. "Distracted, maybe. Overwhelmed. But never bad." The observation was generous, more generous than he deserved. During their marriage, Adrian had been a weekend father at best, present physically but mentally consumed by work, by the endless pursuit of the next deal, the next victory. "I missed so much," he admitted. "Even when I was here, I wasn't really here. You were building something, providing for us. I was hiding." The confession came out rougher than he'd intended. "After my father left, I told myself that if I could just make enough money, accumulate enough success, I'd never be vulnerable again. Never be the kind of man who could just walk away." Olivia's expression softened. "And instead, you became the kind of man who couldn't stop moving long enough to see what he already had." "Yeah." Adrian scrubbed a hand through his hair. "By the time I realized what I was doing, it felt too late to change. And then after that night, after I scared you, after I failed to see how much you were struggling." He met her eyes across the table. "I should have noticed the signs. Should have gotten you help sooner, supported you better. Instead, I made it about my fear instead of your pain." The silence stretched between them, heavy with the weight of old wounds and new understanding. "We both made mistakes," Olivia said finally. "The question is whether we've learned from them." "Have we?" She smiled, the first truly unguarded smile he'd seen from her since she'd arrived. "Ask me in a few years." The transformation in their family dynamic was gradual but unmistakable. Dinners became longer, filled with conversation and laughter. Weekends evolved from structured activities designed to fill time into genuine adventures. Hiking in Central Park, visiting museums, building elaborate pillow forts that took over the entire living room. Adrian found himself looking forward to coming home in a way he hadn't in years. The sound of children's voices and Olivia's laughter drew him like a beacon, making even his worst business days bearable. But beneath the growing warmth, tension simmered. He caught himself staring at Olivia when she wasn't looking, memorizing the way sunlight caught in her hair, the unconscious grace with which she moved through their home. When she laughed at something Ethan said, Adrian felt an answering warmth unfurl in his chest. When she absently touched his shoulder while reaching for something across the dinner table, electricity shot through his entire body. He was falling in love with his children's nanny, who happened to be his ex-wife. The irony would have been amusing if it weren't so devastating, because every moment of growing closeness was built on a foundation of deception. Every shared glance, every comfortable silence, every flutter of possibility between them existed in the shadow of the truth neither of them had the courage to speak aloud. The breaking point came on a rainy Saturday afternoon. Adrian was in his office, supposedly reviewing quarterly reports, but actually watching through his open door as Olivia and the children built something elaborate with blocks in the living room. Their project had taken over the entire space, requiring complex engineering discussions and frequent artistic consultations. "It needs more structural support here," Ethan was saying, pointing to a precarious tower that looked ready to topple. "What if we use the arch technique?" Olivia suggested. "Sometimes the strongest structures are the ones that seem impossible." Adrian smiled despite himself. Even in play, she was teaching them about physics, about problem solving, about persistence in the face of challenges. Then Lily squealed in delight as their creation finally held, launching herself at Olivia in a spontaneous hug. "You're the best, Anna. I wish you could be our mom." The words hit the room like a bomb. Olivia went rigid, her face draining of color. Ethan looked stricken, as if he'd been thinking the same thing but hadn't dared voice it. And Adrian felt his heart stop completely. "Lily," Ethan said quietly, "Anna's our nanny. Not our mom. But she could be." Lily's voice turned pleading. "She takes care of us and loves us and knows all our favorite things. That's what moms do, right?" Olivia's hands were shaking now. Adrian could see her struggling for words, for some way to respond that wouldn't break his daughter's heart or reveal the truth that was clawing at her throat. "Sweetie," she managed finally. Being a mom it's complicated. But do you love us? Lily pressed, her 8-year-old logic relentless. Like a mom would. And there it was. The question that laid everything bare. Olivia closed her eyes, and when she opened them again, they were bright with unshed tears. Yes, she whispered. I love you both more than anything in the world. Then why can't you be our mom? The silence that followed was deafening. Adrian could see Olivia breaking apart, could see the exact moment when her carefully constructed facade finally cracked beyond repair. Because, she said, her voice barely audible, sometimes loving someone means accepting that you can't have everything you want. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face as she tried to hold herself together for the children's sake. But Lily, with the emotional intelligence that constantly surprised Adrian, immediately wrapped her small arms around Olivia's neck. Don't cry, Anna. Please don't cry. And that's when Olivia's control finally, completely shattered. Oh, sweetheart, she sobbed, pulling Lily close. My beautiful, perfect girl. You have no idea how long I've wanted to hold you like this. The words were out before she could stop them, raw and desperate and achingly honest. Ethan moved closer, his young face troubled by emotions he couldn't quite name. Anna. Olivia looked at both children, memorizing their faces as if trying to capture this moment forever. Then her gaze found Adrian across the room, and he saw everything she'd been hiding. The love, the longing, the desperate hope she'd been too afraid to acknowledge. I have to tell you something, she said, her voice strengthening with resolve. Something important. Adrian stepped into the room, his heart hammering. This was it. The moment of truth that would either heal their fractured family or destroy it completely. Children, Olivia continued, her hands gentle on their faces. My real name isn't Anna Carter. It's Olivia Hart. And she took a shuddering breath. I'm your mother. The silence that followed felt endless. Ethan was the first to speak, his voice small and confused. Our mom. Yes. But mom left us, Lily said, her words cutting through the air like glass. Daddy said she went away because she didn't want to be our mom anymore. Adrian felt like he'd been punched. Lily, that's not. You told us she chose to leave. Ethan interrupted, his voice getting louder. You said she picked her freedom over us. I never said that, Adrian protested, but even as the words left his mouth, he knew they were false. Maybe he'd never used those exact phrases, but in 100 small ways, through careful omissions and strategic truths, he'd painted that picture for his children. He'd made Olivia the villain so he could be the hero. You did, Ethan's voice cracked. Maybe not with words, but you did. And now you're telling us she's been here all along? That she's Anna? Olivia reached for him, but Ethan stepped back, his 10-year-old face twisted with betrayal and confusion. Why didn't you tell us? He demanded. Why did you lie? Because I was afraid, Olivia admitted. Afraid that if your father knew who I really was, he'd make me leave. And I couldn't. I couldn't bear to lose you again. But you left us before. The accusation burst out of Lily, her small hands balled into fists. If you're really our mom, why did you leave us before? Adrian watched his children's faces, saw the pain and confusion there, and felt something fundamental crack in his chest. In his determination to protect them from disappointment, he'd robbed them of the truth. And now the truth was more painful than any lie could have been. I didn't want to leave, Olivia said, sinking to her knees so she was at their eye level. I was very sick, sweetheart. Sad in a way that made it hard for me to think clearly. And one day, I made a terrible mistake that scared your father. What kind of mistake? Ethan asked, his analytical mind needing facts. Olivia glanced at Adrian, a silent question in her eyes. How much truth could their children handle? I was supposed to take care of you, she said slowly. But I fell asleep when I shouldn't have. You were scared, and I wasn't there to help you, and that was wrong. Very, very wrong. Like when Ginny's mom fell asleep during the babysitter's movie and we couldn't wake her up? Lily asked, referencing a recent playdate incident. Similar, Olivia agreed. Except I was sick, not just tired. And your father was so worried about keeping you safe that he decided you'd be better off without me. All eyes turned to Adrian. He felt exposed, raw, as if every decision he'd made in the past 3 years was being held up for examination. I was afraid, he admitted, the words scraping his throat. Your mom was hurting, and I didn't know how to help her get better while also making sure you were safe. So I made a choice that seemed right at the time. But it wasn't right, Ethan said, his voice flat with the kind of bitter understanding that no 10-year-old should possess. It was just easy. The assessment hit Adrian like a physical blow because it was absolutely, devastatingly accurate. Keeping Olivia away had been the easy choice. Fighting for their family, supporting her through recovery, learning to trust again, that would have been the hard choice. The right choice. You're right, he said quietly. It was easy. And wrong. And I'm sorry. The next few hours were the longest of Adrian's life. The children retreated to their rooms, Lily to cry, Ethan to think. Olivia sat in the living room surrounded by the scattered blocks of their abandoned project, staring at nothing. Adrian paced between his office and the kitchen, his mind churning with possible solutions to a problem that felt impossibly complex. How did you rebuild trust when it had been shattered so completely? How did you explain adult decisions to children who saw only the hurt those decisions had caused? Finally, as evening approached, Adrian couldn't stand it anymore. He went to Ethan's room first, knocking gently on the door. "Go away," came the muffled response. "Ethan, please. We need to talk." "Why? So you can lie to me some more?" Adrian leaned his forehead against the door. "I've never lied to you." "Really? What about when I asked why Mom never called? You said she was busy starting her new life. What about when Lily asked if Mom missed us? You said you didn't know, but you did know, didn't you? You knew because you made sure she couldn't see us." Each word was a scalpel, precise and devastating. Adrian pushed open the door and found his son sitting on his bed, his face red and blotchy from crying. "You're right," Adrian said, sitting carefully on the edge of the mattress. "I told you partial truths because I thought they would hurt less than the whole truth. I was wrong. Why didn't you want us to know her?" The question Adrian had been dreading. Because the real answer was ugly, complicated, steeped in his own fears and insecurities. "Because I was afraid she would leave again," he said finally. "And I thought if you never got close to her, it wouldn't hurt as much when she did. But she didn't leave this time. She came back." "Yes. She came back, and you didn't even know it." Ethan's voice held a note of something that might have been admiration. "She's smarter than you thought." Despite everything, Adrian felt his mouth quirk upward. "Much smarter. She always was." They sat in silence for a moment, father and son processing the ruins of everything they thought they knew. "Do you love her?" Ethan asked suddenly. The question caught Adrian completely off guard. "I what? Mom. Anna. Whatever. Do you love her?" Adrian opened his mouth to deflect, to give some adult non-answer that would dodge the question. But looking at his son's face, so young but already too wise, he found he couldn't. "Yes," he said quietly. "I do. I always have." "Then why did you let her go?" "Because I was a coward. Because I was so afraid of being hurt that I hurt everyone else first. Because I thought control was the same as love. Because I made a mistake," Adrian said instead. "The biggest mistake of my life." Ethan considered this. "Can you fix it?" "I don't know. Do you want me to try?" For the first time since the revelation, Ethan smiled. It was a small smile, tentative and fragile, but it was there. "Yeah," he said. "I do." Lily's room was next, and she was harder to reach. She sat curled up in her reading nook, surrounded by stuffed animals, her face streaked with tears. "My tummy hurts," she announced when Adrian sat down beside her. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's not sick hurt. It's sad hurt." Adrian's chest tightened. "Can you tell me about the sad hurt?" "I thought Anna liked us because we were good. But she's our mom, so she has to like us. It's different." The logic was heartbreaking in its simplicity. In Lily's 8-year-old understanding, love had to be earned, and parental love somehow counted less because it was obligatory. "Lily, look at me." Adrian waited until she met his eyes. "Your mom, Anna, she didn't have to come back. She didn't have to spend weeks learning how to take care of you without you knowing who she was. She could have tried to see you in lots of other ways, but she chose to come here, to be with you every day, because she wanted to be part of your life. But she lied. Yes, she did. And lying is wrong. But sometimes grown-ups make bad choices for good reasons." What was her good reason? Adrian thought about how to explain the complexities of custody law and parental rights to an 8-year-old. "She was afraid I wouldn't let her see you if I knew who she was." "Would you have?" The question hung in the air. Would he have? A month ago, Adrian would have said absolutely not. But now, having seen Olivia with the children, having witnessed the magic she brought to their lives. I don't know, he said honestly. I hope I would have been smart enough to see how much you needed her. Lily was quiet for a long moment, processing this. Is she going to leave again? She asked finally, and Adrian heard the fear beneath the words. Do you want her to stay? Yes. But what if she gets sick again? What if she falls asleep and can't wake up? Adrian pulled his daughter into his lap, marveling at how clearly she'd understood Olivia's explanation of her past struggles. Your mom got help when she was sick, he said carefully. She learned how to take care of herself so she could take care of you. And this time, if she ever needs help, we'll all work together to make sure she gets it. Promise. I promise. Lily snuggled against his chest, and Adrian felt some of the tension ease out of both of them. Daddy, yes. I'm glad she came back, even if she lied. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. He found Olivia in the garden that evening, sitting on the bench they'd installed when they first bought the penthouse. She'd loved that little patch of green in the middle of the city, had spent hours planning and planting and nurturing it into something beautiful. She looked up when he approached, her face carefully neutral. How are they? She asked. Confused. Hurt. But they'll be okay. Adrian sat down beside her, careful to leave space between them. They want you to stay. Something flickered in her expression. Hope, quickly suppressed. And what do you want? The question he'd been asking himself for weeks. What did he want? For things to go back to the way they were before? Impossible. For his children to be happy? They were happiest with her. For his own peace of mind? That ship had sailed the moment he realized who she was. I want what's best for Ethan and Lily, he said finally. That's not what I asked. No, it wasn't. But the real answer was too dangerous, too complicated, too loaded with possibility and pain. Olivia, it's okay. She stood up, wrapping her arms around herself. You don't have to say anything. I know this changes everything. I know you can't trust me now. It's not about trust. Then what? Adrian looked up at her, this woman who'd turned his life upside down twice now, and felt the last of his defenses crumble. It's about the fact that I've been falling in love with my children's nanny, he said quietly. And now I find out she's actually my ex-wife, and I don't know what the hell that means. Olivia went very still. Adrian, do you know how insane that is? I've been lying awake at night thinking about Anna Carter, wondering if it would be appropriate to ask her out, trying to figure out how to navigate the ethics of being attracted to someone I employ. And all the while, it was you. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never meant for you to. To what? To remember why I fell in love with you in the first place. Adrian stood up, closing the distance between them. Because that's what happened, Olivia. Watching you with our children, seeing the woman you've become. I remembered. Remembered what? Everything. The way you used to make pancakes in the shape of animals when the kids were sad. The way you'd sing in the shower and think no one could hear you. The way you'd get so focused on a painting that you'd forget to eat. His voice caught. The way it felt to come home to you. Tears were streaming down her face now. Don't. Please don't do this to me. Do what? Give me hope when we both know it's impossible. Why is it impossible? Because. The word exploded out of her. Because you don't forgive, Adrian. You never have. You hold grudges like other people hold breath, like your life depends on it. And what I did, what I put our family through, that's not something you can just forget. You're right, Adrian said quietly. I don't forgive easily. I never have. Olivia closed her eyes, as if his words were a physical blow. But, he continued, I've learned some things about myself these past few weeks. About what matters. About what I've been too stubborn and proud to see. She looked at him then, hope and fear warring in her expression. I've learned that our children need their mother. Not just any mother, their mother. The woman who knows that Ethan thinks better when he's moving, so she lets him pace during homework time. The woman who sings Lily to sleep not because it's her job, but because she remembers how much her daughter loves music. Adrian, I've learned that love isn't about never making mistakes. It's about fighting to come back from them. And you did that, Olivia. You got help. You got better. You became the woman you are now. Stronger, wiser, more beautiful than ever. But the lying was wrong, he agreed. And we'll have to figure out how to rebuild trust. But the lying came from love, not malice. You didn't deceive me to hurt our family. You deceived me to save it. Olivia was sobbing now, years of pain and longing finally breaking free. I missed them so much, she choked out. I missed you so much. Every day, Adrian. Every single day. And then she was in his arms, and he was holding her like he'd wanted to for 3 years, and it felt like coming home. "I'm sorry," he whispered into her hair. "I'm so sorry for all of it. For not seeing how much you were struggling. For making the custody battle about winning instead of healing. For keeping our children from their mother because I was too afraid to risk being hurt again. I'm sorry too," she sobbed against his chest. "For lying, for deceiving everyone, for putting our children in the middle of this mess." "We both made mistakes," Adrian said, pulling back to look at her face. "But we're here now. All of us. And if you're willing to try, to really try, not as Anna Carter, but as Olivia Hart, then I want to figure out how to be a family again." Hope bloomed in her expression, tentative but real. "You mean that?" "I mean it. But Olivia, no more lies. No more pretending to be someone else. I want you, all of you, broken pieces and healing scars and everything. Can you do that?" She cupped his face in her hands, her touch gentle and sure. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, I can do that." And then she kissed him, soft and sweet, and tasting of tears and forgiveness. It was their first kiss in 3 years, but it felt like coming home to something they'd both thought was lost forever. 3 months later. "Mom, Ethan's not sharing the good crayons." Lily's voice carried from the dining room, where both children were working on a massive art project that had taken over the entire table. "Ethan, what did we discuss about sharing supplies?" Olivia called back, not looking up from the lesson plans she was grading at the kitchen counter. After the truth came out, she'd gradually transitioned from nanny to mother, though the shift hadn't been without its challenges. There had been counseling sessions, individual and family, to work through the layers of hurt and confusion. There had been difficult conversations about honesty, about trust, about what it meant to be a family. But there had also been joy. Pure, uncomplicated joy in simple moments like this. The organized chaos of a Sunday afternoon, children bickering over art supplies while their mother worked nearby, and their father. "Where's Dad?" Ethan asked, appearing in the kitchen doorway with purple crayon smudges on his fingers. "Conference call with Tokyo," Olivia answered automatically. "He should be done soon." It was a phrase she'd said countless times over the past months, but now it carried different weight. Because now Adrian's work-from-home policy wasn't about control or surveillance. It was about choice. The choice to be present, to be available, to prioritize family alongside business. He still traveled when necessary, but never for more than a few days at a time. And when he was home, he was really home. Phones on silent during dinner, laptops closed during bedtime stories. Full attention given to the people who mattered most. "Can we show him our project when he's done?" Lily asked, bouncing into the kitchen with her own rainbow of crayon stains decorating her shirt. "If he has time," Olivia hedged, though she suspected Adrian would make time regardless of his schedule. "He'll have time," Ethan said with the confidence of a child who'd learned he could count on his father's presence. "He always has time now." The simple statement made Olivia's chest tight with gratitude. Because Ethan was right, Adrian did always have time now. Not just for the big moments, but for the small ones too. The bedtime conversations, the help with homework, the elaborate Saturday morning pancake constructions that had become a family tradition. They were still rebuilding, still learning how to be a family of 4 instead of 3 separate people sharing space. But they were learning together, with patience and humor and the kind of love that grew stronger under pressure instead of breaking apart. "Mrs. Blackwell." Margaret's voice came through the intercom system. "Your husband's call ended early. He's asking if you're free for a quick chat." Olivia smiled at the formal address. After everything that had happened, she'd eventually decided to take back Adrian's name. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. Because being Mrs. Blackwell meant being part of something bigger than herself again. "Tell him I'll be right there," she said. She found Adrian in his office, but he wasn't behind his desk. Instead, he was sitting on the small couch by the window, looking relaxed in a way that still sometimes surprised her. "How was Tokyo?" she asked, settling beside him. "Productive, but I kept thinking about Lily's art project. Did she finish the castle?" "Castle, moat, dragon, and princess. The whole 9 yards." Olivia curled up against his side, marveling at how natural it felt now. "She wants to show you as soon as possible." And Ethan built a working catapult to go with her castle. They're planning a siege after dinner. Adrian laughed, the sound warm and unguarded. "Our children are either going to be military strategists or professional troublemakers." Why not both? They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the late afternoon sun stream through the windows. These were the moments Olivia treasured most. Not the grand gestures or dramatic reconciliations, but the quiet contentment of being together, being known, being home. Olivia, I have something for you. She looked up to find him reaching into his desk drawer, his expression suddenly serious. Adrian, what? He pulled out a small velvet box, and Olivia's breath caught in her throat. This isn't what you think, he said quickly, seeing her expression. I mean, it might be someday, if you want it to be, but right now it's something else. With trembling fingers, she opened the box to reveal a delicate necklace, a simple gold chain with two small pendants. One was engraved with Ethan, the other with Lily. Their birthstones are on the back, Adrian explained quietly. I had it made after the custody hearing. I thought maybe someday I'd find a way to give it to you, but then you convinced yourself I didn't deserve it. Olivia finished, understanding. Then I convinced myself a lot of things that weren't true. He took the necklace from the box, his hands gentle as he fastened it around her neck. This is 3 years overdue, but I wanted you to have it now, to know that you were always their mother, even when I was too afraid to admit it. Olivia touched the pendants, feeling the weight of them against her skin, not heavy, but significant, permanent. Thank you, she whispered. There's something else. Adrian's voice was nervous now, uncertain in a way that made her look up at him in surprise. I talked to my lawyers about the custody arrangement. Olivia went still. What about it? I want to change it. Official joint custody, 50-50, everything legal and proper. You shouldn't have to sneak around to be with your own children. The words hit her like a physical force. For 3 years, she'd dreamed of this moment, of having legal recognition as Ethan and Lily's mother again. But she'd never dared hope it would actually happen. Are you sure? She asked. Because once it's legal, I can't just disappear if things get complicated between us. Adrian cupped her face in his hands, his eyes serious and steady. Olivia, I don't want you to disappear. Ever. I want you here, with us, for all of it. The messy mornings and chaotic dinners and middle-of-the-night stomach bugs. I want to argue about bedtimes and compare notes on parent-teacher conferences and tag-team the teenage years when they arrive. And if we can't make it work? If we try to rebuild this and it falls apart again? Then we figure out how to co-parent with respect and love instead of lawyers and resentment. His thumbs brushed across her cheekbones. But Olivia, I don't think we're going to fall apart again. I think we're stronger now. Smarter. More honest about what we need from each other. She leaned into his touch, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was offering. Not just joint custody, but partnership. Not just forgiveness, but faith in their future. What did I do to deserve a second chance? She whispered. You fought for our children. You never gave up on our family, even when I gave up on you. Adrian's voice was rough with emotion. You came back, Olivia. Despite everything I put you through, you came back. I'll always come back, she said fiercely. No matter what happens, no matter how hard it gets, I'll always come back to them. To you. I know, he said simply. That's why I'm not afraid anymore. And then he kissed her, soft and sure and full of promise. Outside his office, they could hear their children's voices, Lily calling for help with something, Ethan offering elaborate solutions involving engineering principles he'd learned from YouTube. Their family. Imperfect, complicated, harder won than most. But theirs. When they finally broke apart, Olivia rested her forehead against Adrian's, breathing in the scent of home. So what happens now? She asked. Now we go help our daughter with her art project and pretend to be impressed by our son's catapult, Adrian said, smiling. And tonight, after they're asleep, we start planning the rest of our lives. Together? Together. 6 months later. The wedding was small, just family and a few close friends gathered in the same garden where Adrian and Olivia had found their way back to each other. She wore a simple dress, cream-colored and elegant, with the necklace he'd given her months earlier visible at her throat. Ethan and Lily stood beside them as they exchanged vows, both children beaming with pride at having orchestrated what they'd later claim was their plan all along. I knew Anna was special, Lily whispered loudly during the ceremony, earning chuckles from their guests. I told Daddy she should stay forever. You did indeed, Adrian murmured, his eyes never leaving Olivia's face. They'd written their own vows, words that spoke of second chances and hard-won wisdom. of love that was stronger for having been tested. I promise to choose us, Olivia said, her voice steady and clear. Every day, in every way. To be honest, even when it's difficult. To fight for our family, even when it seems impossible. And to never, ever give up on the love we've built together. I promise to see you, Adrian replied, his own voice thick with emotion. Not as the woman you were or the woman I thought you should be, but as the woman you are, brave, fierce, beautiful, and irreplaceably mine. I promise to trust in our love, even when fear tries to convince me otherwise. When they kissed as husband and wife for the second time in their lives, their children cheered loudly enough to disturb the neighbors 3 blocks away. Later, as the evening wound down and their guests began to leave, Adrian found Olivia standing at the edge of their little garden, looking out at the city lights. Any regrets? He asked, slipping his arms around her from behind. Only that it took us so long to get here, she said, leaning back against his chest. We got here when we were ready, not a moment sooner. Very philosophical for a man who once scheduled his emotions with his assistant. Hey, Margaret never scheduled my emotions. She just made sure I actually felt them on time. Olivia laughed, the sound carrying across the garden like music. From inside the house, they could hear Ethan reading a story to Lily, a tradition he'd started after witnessing how much his sister loved being read to. They're going to be okay, Olivia said softly. All the therapy, all the difficult conversations, all the work we've put into rebuilding. They're going to be okay. We all are, Adrian agreed. Better than okay. They stood together in comfortable silence, husband and wife again, watching their children through the window as the city sparkled around them. It had been a long journey back to this moment, through heartbreak and healing, through deception and forgiveness, through the kind of love that only grew stronger when it was tested. Adrian, yes. Thank you. For what? For letting me come home. He turned her in his arms, his hands framing her face in the gesture that had become as natural as breathing. Olivia, he said softly, you never left. You just took the long way back. And as he kissed her again under the stars, with their children's laughter drifting through the open windows and the promise of tomorrow stretching endlessly before them, Olivia knew he was right. She was home. They all were. Finally, completely, perfectly home. If you made it to the end, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. It truly means the world to us. See you in the next one.